Hey guys, hope everyone's doing good. I've been working away at the car, trying to get the front suspension kind of figured out. Basically, I'm trying to get as much travel out of it as I can and still have the front suspension geometry acceptable, I guess you'd say. I don't really want to have huge camber changes from full compression to full extension or big bump steer issues. I've been trying different combinations of parts, different upper ball joint lengths, different spacers for the upper ball joint. I've been trying the ball joint on different angles. So if I were to cut this out and weld it at a different angle, I've been trying different rack heights, different tie rod lengths, different tie rod heights, even different control arm angles. Just trying to get the suspension to work as best as possible. But it's all kind of just mocked up right now. I really want to get some shocks ordered for it. So I wanted to figure out how much extension I could get and figure how I was going to mount the shock. So I want to run a 7-inch stroke shock with a 14-inch spring. That way I can kind of run a longer, lighter spring so it'll store a little more energy. And I already run a 7-inch stroke shock in the rear, so I was able to pull one out so I could use it for mock-up. So first thing I did was basically mock up the control arms, the tie rod and everything, and basically let it rest and see what was hitting, and basically just start trimming from there to get as much extension as I could. There's not really any other way to do it, I don't think, especially with an A-arm setup like this. So I'll show you, this is the spring pocket on my subframe already. Basically started with the bump stop, I cut this section out. It ended up kind of being like a little wedge shape, and I just kind of kept working my way down until I got basically to the limits of the ball joints and the tie rod. Once I got down so far, basically this brace started getting in the way too of the shock. So I ended up having to cut that out so I could go any further. Once I got that cut out, then it started getting into more down in here. So I basically end up cutting this whole front section off. Just a rough cut right now, but basically I'm just going to plate that up. Once I get it all finalized, you can see basically just lets the control arm swing right down there now. Right now I'm at the point where the upper ball joint is at its max, so I really can't go any further than that. Last year, the car had about 4.5 inches of extension from ride height. The suspension had more in it, but I was kind of running the car with a little higher front ride height than normal, so it kind of took away from the extension. The idea behind that is you see a lot of cars like that. So the nose is kind of up in the air just to kind of get the weight already in motion towards the back, already shifting weight towards the back, if that makes sense. Gets the crank center line up higher and kind of already starts putting weight on the rear tires before the suspension even starts to really travel and really shift weight that way. So the car did have a fair bit of travel before, but I had quite a bit up in compression still. So like I say, I had 4.5 inches from ride height before. This is right about ride height, so we're about 24.25-ish. 24 3/8. So this is basically what it's got right now. 2, 3, 4, so that's where I was. 5, 6, 7. So it's got about 7 inches from ride height now. And it's still got like 2 or 3 inches up in compression. So it's got a ton. So it's got a ton of travel right now. I don't know if I necessarily need all that, but I want to set the car up so it has it. If it gets onto really bad surfaces, I can try it basically. I'm going to put limiters on it so I can adjust the height wherever I want it. I don't think I'll start out with that much extension. Basically, I just want it to be available if I want to try it. So mounting the shock turned into like a whole nother issue. Basically where my lower mount was and where I wanted to mount the upper mount up to the strut bar, basically when the shock would sweep through its kind of range of travel there, as the control arm goes up, the shock kind of sweeps out. Basically either be I was in against the back or I was up against this side over here. So I ended up cutting off my lower shock mounts. I made some new ones. I didn't really have time to wait for another set. Kind of clocked them backwards, got it kind of where I want it. So basically just rotated that shock mount backwards a little bit. The front, I do plan on mounting to the strut bar. I want to keep it as close as I can to the strut bar because I got to leave room for my turbo headers, and I want to try to lower the headers down this year so I can get a hood back on the car. At about ride height, my shock is pretty well straight up and down. It's swinging in a little more than I want. I still got to tweak the mounts, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get away from it swinging in like that at the bottom unless I move my top mount way over towards the engine, which is going to make it way harder to make the headers. I've seen a lot of S10 stuff where they're kind of aimed in that direction, and I don't really think it's an issue. The only thing is it is going to affect my spring rate because now you're pulling on the control arm a lot closer to the pivot. So it's going to take a bit stronger spring probably to hold the car up and probably a bit stronger shock to control it. I did find a little chart on QA1 website where you can calculate the effect on the spring rate for your shock angles. So I can calculate that and kind of figure out how much of a change it's going to make. But I really just got to make the shock work. It is what it is. That's what's going to work. That's what's going to clear. But something like that's probably going to do it for me. So basically just got to cut and hack until you get what you want. It's just the way it is. Probably be able to change these braces a little bit around after. Get them back in probably. I don't know if it really needs it. It's already got this crossbar here. For what I'm doing, I don't know if it's really necessary, but I will try to get them back in there. But right now, I've pulled quite a bit more extension out of it. Like that's 2.5 more inches than what I ran last year. Yeah, I'm just going to keep pushing forward with it, get the shocks mounted. So I'm going to get the shock mounts kind of finalized. This is just something I had just to kind of mount the top, but I'm going to try to basically make a mount over to the strut bar and probably make like kind of a plate to go over top of it to help reinforce it. Probably quite a bit of load on it. And I want to try to tie that all in. Also, probably going to make another little down bar from the strut bar down to the subframe. I see a lot of guys. I see a lot of guys that are running tubular subframes are doing that. And I think with having the coilover mounted over right here, definitely be an advantage for me. The only thing I really did get accomplished was I got my steering shaft reconnected. I had to remake this lower shaft. I had to shorten the steering column and move the U-joint up to clear this support bar for the lower control arm mount. Made a support for the lower part of the steering column. It's just a Heim joint with a little tube adapter that I made. I'm going to just weld to the frame. It's actually an aluminum Heim with an aluminum nut. So a little bit lighter, but my old setup was like that. It worked pretty well. So I did actually get that accomplished. But I'm going to keep forging ahead with the shock mounts. I want to get that stuff finalized. I want to get shocks ordered and keep pushing forward. I think next step is probably move into the headers once I get all the upper shock mount and everything finalized. Headers, rear training cross member, I still got to do that. That should be pretty quick and easy, hopefully. Hopefully be able to pick up a little more momentum here. The front suspension stuff kind of slowed me down for a couple weeks. Just trying to get everything good as I could, basically. Really hard getting everything perfect with this much travel, I think. And I struggled with that a little bit over the last 2 weeks. But moving forward now, thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone who's hit the subscribe button. If you haven't done so already, do me a favor, just hit the subscribe button for me. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.